baker. Put your hands in the air, give me all your money.
This is the story of my baker, the meanest cat.
Well, greetings from King Edward VII Hospital yet again. I'm still here. I'm still holding my own. They're pleased with my progress. I'm not. I am so fragile, I cannot tell you. I am so one step away from total collapse much of the time that it is truly distressing and discomforting. Of course, they're being very encouraging, but I don't believe in deluding myself. I believe in speaking the truth to myself, and insofar as it is feasible to other people as well. So, but anyway, I'm here, and I am delighted at the fact that both Mr. Paul Culpen and Mr. Philip Stott have been able to get some of the acknowledgement that they deserve, because they certainly deserved an awful lot. Sorry, I just need to get myself a bit more comfortable. I'm no longer in excruciating pain, but comfort is another matter altogether. So anyway, without being a health bore, I am going to plunge in with what Tanya Fabregas says, because we have a lot of really rather interesting ground to cover today. And an awful lot is going on worldwide that is absolutely fascinating. And the messages are far more mixed than people would appreciate. And it's worth noting what they are and the significance of them, because we are living in times where enemies are functioning with enemies as if they are friends, and friends are functioning without friends as if they were enemies. It's a really interesting, the geopolitical uncertainty and inexactitude of today. I agree with Professor Christopher Clark, whose latest book is on the 1848-49 year of revolutions. And we are going through a similarly unstable time. The last time it was because the society was transiting from being an agrarian society to an industrial and then post-industrial society. And now we are going from being a post-industrial society to a robotized and artificial intelligence and internetized society, which means that more people now have access to more information than they have ever had, more immediately than in the whole history of humanity. And these are issues that are colliding very definitely with some of the old-fashioned precepts by which we have all led our lives from the beginning of civilization until very recently. We are in a state of flux, and those of us who don't realize it are ultimately going to realize it by waking up to a few unwelcome facts, many of which are taking place right under our nose. So, Tanya Fabregas says, it seems that Smeg, we're starting off on a light note, is going back to acting. I'm so authentic, I'm so natural. Now, Mr. Mill, let me see, did I get that authenticity right? Or did I have, shall I do it again? Let's try to be a little bit more authentic. maybe if I inject a little bit more affectation into my authenticity, I'll become even more authentic. What do you think, Mr. DeMille? Please tell me, because I don't really know, Mr. DeMille. I'm flying blind here. I've never known what authenticity or one other real emotion was, and I need somebody's help. And it's got to be you, Mr. DeMille, because it can't be anybody else, because I can't admit to anybody else that I am an ignoramus of the highest order and an empty vessel that simply clanks around making a lot of noise. But anyway, to continue. Is this because she knows the titles will be gone soon? The film is going to be called Close Personal Friends. How ironic. Well, better than calling it family. Very surprised to see Lily Collins is in the movie. She is a brilliant actress. I can't imagine anyone wanting to work with Meghan on a movie. Apparently she is going to play herself. That should be interesting. Well, she's been doing it all her life and she still hasn't got it down pat. So I would have thought it's going to be as Yawnsville as it's always been. You know, if you can't even get playing yourself down pat, I mean, really, something's terrifically wrong. Well, yes. Now, this is being presented, of course, as a great coup, because Meg's baby is going back to acting 8 years after she gave it up. Actually, it's after it gave her up. Because remember, she was being written out of Suits, and when the Queen gave her a chance to keep on with her acting career, she said, "Oh no, I don't want to do that. I want to join the team. I want to hit the ground running. I want to be a team player. I want to be a member of the royal family. And I then want to monetize everything." Sorry, my mouth slipped. I shouldn't have said that, Lilibet. Well, since I said it, if you've heard it, you've got to know I'm going to score back, because I'm going to steal your name and I'm going to give it to Harry's daughter. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call it an honor as I shaft you. Am I not clever? I'm just such a clever dicky bird. Well, the film is evidently set in Pasadena, and it co-stars Lily, as mentioned, Brie Larson and Jack Quaid, who is Dennis Quaid and Meg Rand's son. According to people who have been on the set, Meghan ingratiated herself to everyone, doing the I'm Meghan. I'm just Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, and you know, you can call me Her Royal Highness, and we'll be happy with that. And you don't need to bow and scrape, just bow. And I'm just going to endow you and honor you with my presence. And in the meantime, I'm just going to be nice. And I'm going to tell everybody how wonderful I am. And you're going to tell everybody how wonderful I am. Because I'm going to be as sweet as pie. There will be very limited interaction, I gather, between Meghan and most of the cast. She doesn't have a big role. In fact, I was told that she has a small role. So Meghan's returning to acting. Meghan's not getting 5 or 10 million, and she's not getting 50 or 100 million for the starring role that she hoped she would get when she moved to California. If she's getting $250,000, she's getting a lot. That's not going to go very far. Now, let me see. how many private hires for planes is that going to be? Oh, I forgot. Meg's baby doesn't believe in private hire. She believes in cadging lifts. Oh dear, how does that one work? According to Meg's baby and her team, she has been swamped with offers, absolutely swamped with them, and took the first one, the only one, took the one that actually materialized. Do you see the dire straits this woman is in? Do you see the tremendous problem she has? All that high earning capacity has not only flown out of the window, but the perception of its existence has flown out with it, which means that they can now nickel and dime her, and they are doing it. She definitely needs a billionaire. Yes, she does. Definitely needs a billionaire. She's certainly not going to become one. I know, to give her her due, she would be perfectly happy to hustle those buns with Harry, and he bums around all day and is the waste of space that he is, while she hustles and makes money and puts the billions on the table. I think that would work very well for them. She would be able to give him the money, he'd be able to give her the kudos. But is it working? Because now that Prince Andrew has been gazetted, and I've mentioned being gazetted before, and we'll get to that in a little while, and how serious gazetting is, and that Harry could be gazetted as well. I'm just going to be Meghan Markle again. Can that be possible? And if Harry's really clever, he will do what has not yet been done. And he will ask for his titles to be put into abeyance. And she would be just Mrs. Henry Windsor, Mrs. Meghan Windsor. My heart breaks for her. I hope yours does too. QPR says, Lady C, could you please unravel the Gordian knot of Prince William being accompanied to Rio by the British Prime Minister and Ed Miliband for the Earthshot Prize Awards? The message I'm getting is that this is huge for the monarchy as well as the government. But surely the government is at loggerheads with the monarchy. The government, they're all declared anti-monarchists. Yes, well, this is where I say people who are supposed to be friends are not friends, and people who are sworn enemies pretend as if they're friends when it suits them. This is realpolitik. This is what politics is and has always been all about. There's nothing unique about it. It's just that we were brought up to believe that politicians were rather nobler than they are, and that they actually had rather more stringent, shall we say, constraints behaviour-wise than they do. Keir Starmer is a declared anti-monarchist. Ed Miliband is a declared anti-monarchist. Of course, Ed Miliband is very green, and the Earthshot Prize is very green. And so, to the extent that William and Ed Miliband have something that's genuinely in common, and they can rub along with that, and each of them can feel that he is doing something for himself and his cause while using the other. That is what's going on there. As for Keir Starmer, he's just an out-and-out opportunist who uses everyone and everything. But they are all, for their own woke reasons, promoting the Earthshot Prize and bigging it up to an extent that they would not have been bigging it up previously, because it suits them to do so at the moment. One of the reasons why is what is going on in the United States of America politically. Let us not forget that Keir Starmer heads up with the other European heads of government an anti-American confederation to promote and extend the war in Ukraine so that President Trump does not succeed in achieving peace. This is the reality of what's going on one level, and that's a very important level. So you have something that's contrary going on at a totally different level. Do you begin to see the absolute wheels within wheels? And what will prevail, who will prevail, with what, remains to be seen, because each person and each interest group is pushing its agenda for all it is worth to the maximum of its capacity and to the limits that it feels it can have it endure. Does that make sense? It should, because that's what's going on. Just because two things conflict don't mean that they can't be traveling in the same direction for a length of time. It's like putting two enemies in a car, and they have to pretend that they're friends for, if not the whole of the ride, for as much of the ride as they can suitably dupe themselves and their other parties. So, but William gave a very impassioned speech. He said, "I understand that some might feel discouraged in these uncertain times. I understand that there is still so much to be done. But this is no time for complacency. And the optimism I felt in 2020," that's when he set up the Earthshot Prize, "remains ardent today, because our finalists are a shining example of how we can build stronger economies, design healthier cities, and create better jobs for the next generation." Do you hear what he's saying? He's propounding a decidedly woke agenda. He has Jacinda Ardern and others of that ilk on his team. He is not a climate skeptic. He is a dedicated climate change revivalist. Let's put it that way. Now, I think what he's doing in terms of the Earthshot Prize and the limits that he keeps it within are actually commendable, because they work whether you believe that climate change exists or not. And climate change has always existed, and climate change is always going to continue to exist. The dispute isn't whether the climate changes, it's to what extent, if any, man's conduct since the industrial age has actually had as dramatic an effect upon climate change as the true believers seem to think. But it's a very popular and it's a very prestigious award. And by having kept it within fairly narrow parameters, which means that you don't have to be a die-hard climate changeist to see the merit of what he's doing, he is succeeding brilliantly. It also has the merit from his point of view and the king's point of view of roping in those anti-monarchists who are climate changeists. Of course, Trump is not a climate changeist, but so that's where they all fall out with Trump. But will they fall out with Trump permanently over climate change and other things or not? Let's see who wins the battle, because believe me, it's going to be one hell of a battle, and it's just beginning. What's also going on at the moment that might have escaped and has most likely escaped most people is that in the United Kingdom, right now, as I'm speaking, we have a momentous changes taking place. We have, on the one hand, the Scottish Parliament having voted in the most radical land reform legislation in all of Scotland's history. The Scottish Parliament passed the Land Reform Scotland Bill with 85 in favour, 28 against, and 9 abstentions after government ministers introduced it. According to them, in part to help reduce the concentration of rural land ownership, where small numbers of people own large areas of Scotland's countryside. Now, Scotland, of course, is in many ways a unique situation. It has many old, large estates which have never been particularly valuable because the land has never been good enough for them to be valuable. A Scottish estate of 200,000 acres might be worth what an English estate in the south of 2,000 acres is worth. I make that point for what it's worth. I know what I'm speaking about. This is my world. My ex-husband's family have one of the great estates, the Argyll estate. Half my friends have great estates. Two of the contributors to a very interesting article in today's Telegraph about this Land Reform Act. One of them is the nephew of my sister-in-law, and the other is the daughter-in-law of friends of mine. So, it's not as if to say I am ignorant of the realities of the situation, but who is ignorant of the realities of the situation is the legislators, because Scottish land ownership has evolved in such a way that only if you owned large tranches of land could you have an estate that was at all valuable. Because most of the land wasn't good, for one thing, but so you'd have a bit of land that was good for one thing, and you could work that. Then you have a bit of land that was good for something else, and you could work that. And so in any given year, if one thing didn't work and the other worked, you would keep the whole thing afloat. You never became tremendously rich as a result of it, but you had a viable working estate. What this bill proposes to do is according to its aim, is to increase opportunities for community buyouts of land. And it proposes that when large estates are put on the market, these could be broken up into smaller areas in a process known as lotting, if certain conditions are met. Now, this is insanity and stupidity of the highest order. And if these people knew anything about farming or anything about making money, but unfortunately we have political leaders who A, don't know about making money, and B, aren't productive. They only know about pontificating and spending money that other people make. If you have an estate that is being forcibly broken up, who is going to buy the whole estate? Nobody in their right mind is going to buy 85% and have 15% dotted around it that they have to work their way around. Also, what happens if in the year that the 5% that somebody else owns is what would keep it afloat, and your other percentage doesn't keep it afloat, so you are losing? The whole thing is so cockamamy, as the Americans would say, just absolutely stupid and crazy. What are they going to do? They implement this. They are going to destroy the great estates. And the Scots are not going to benefit. They're not going to benefit because nobody is going to benefit. Because nobody buys land and has an estate running without a great commitment to it. And if I'm going to be running an estate where I have to work my way around pockets of opposing interest within my property, I'm not going to do it. So what's going to happen? They're all going to end up being fallow. That's what's going to happen. And of course, a lot of the land with a lot of them is already fallow. So they're going to simply drop the bottom out of the property market. But they will have achieved their objective, which is to break the power, as they would think of it, of the landowners, reckless to the consequences. What we also have happening here as we speak right now is that the Telegraph has been doing something very interesting on BBC bias. And I would recommend that everybody read what the Telegraph has been doing, because the Telegraph has been covering the complaints that have been made by one of the chief people at the BBC who was responsible for the creation of programs, with how wokeist bias has ruined BBC's reportage. Now, this is very serious because the BBC is our state broadcasting service. Notice that word, service. We pay for the service. We have to pay for the service, whether we want to or not. Their trans bias, their woke bias, their anti-Israeli bias, they have time and again, evidently in recent years, shown that they have absolutely no regard for even-handed reportage. Interesting, don't you think? India says, what no one understands is the rich are doing as they please. All powerful people are united around the world. They never hurt themselves. India, that is a very simplistic comment. And I've got news for you. There are no more savage opponents than two people who want the same crown. The idea that rich people spend their whole time plotting to keep poor people down is ludicrous. Most rich people, as you would put it, are too busy trying to maintain their standard of living and their lifestyle. That's what they're trying to do. They don't have the time to be plotting and scheming with what can well be their competitors. Yes, there is a degree of reciprocity and synchronicity between like-minded people, but there's also an awful lot of backstabbing. And if you think there isn't, it's because you haven't looked at enough Dynasty and Dallas. And certainly because you've never been a part of what you would call the rich world. The idea that rich people spend their whole time trying to keep poor people down is almost as ludicrous as the idea that rich people spend their whole time colluding with each other to keep themselves rich and everybody else poor. That's not how life works. It's about productivity. It's about providing goods and services that people find desirable and wish to become a part of. If there was a surefire success, everybody would be a worldwide best-selling author. Everybody who wanted to be a designer would be the chief couturier. Everybody who wanted to be a cosmetologist would be the latest Helena Rubinstein or somebody of that ilk. I'm afraid that's really so naive as to be actually touching is the word. Anna Moore says, Lady C, can you lead us through the details of the King's letters patent that were published today by the Crown Office in the Gazette, the UK's official public record? They are careful not to refer to the former prince by any title. What title, if any, does he possess? He is Lord Andrew That's what he is, Lord Andrew. His father was a duke, and his father was a duke without being a prince until 1957, if I remember correctly. His father renounced his rights to the Greek throne in 1940, must have been 46, maybe it was 47, so long I don't really remember. But to marry Princess Elizabeth, Prince Philip of Greece had to give up his rights to the Greek throne. And he then became known as Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten. Upon the date of his marriage to Princess Elizabeth, he was made His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh. Therefore, he was a duke. Normally, the sons of dukes who are royal highnesses are princes. But Prince Philip was not the son of a British monarch. So there's a grey area right there. Where there is no grey area is he was definitely a duke. And the second sons of all dukes are lords. They're not necessarily princes, but they are necessarily all lords. So Andrew is Lord Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. And when they call him Mr., they're wrong. He is Lord Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. And he was born the son of a duke. So I'll tell you what the entry says. The King has been pleased by letters patent under the Great Seal of the Realm dated 3rd November 2025 to declare that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor shall no longer be entitled to hold and enjoy the style, title or attribute of Royal Highness and the titular dignity of Prince. It's very clear. He's no longer a prince and he's no longer a Royal Highness. I have said all along that with a stroke of the pen, the King could issue letters patent with regard to Harry. He's done it with regard to Andrew. So, do you begin to see why Meghan and Harry are so worried? How many tears left out? How many? Well, let's not obsess over the number of tears. Let's just rock and roll with the flu, shall we? What is really also interesting is that Virginia Giuffre's family have been bobbing up, declaring that she was an ordinary American girl from an ordinary American family. No, she wasn't. No, she wasn't. No, they weren't. And that she has, and they're proud of it, brought down a British prince with her truth and extraordinary courage. That's not what has brought down Prince Andrew. What has brought down Lord Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is all of the corollaries that go along with this. And all of the issues that will be involved and which the British Crown has no wish to have itself implicated in, because the Americans are gratis, what is his name? The Oversight Committee, which is headed up by Robert Garcia. He's the most senior Democratic figure on the committee. He says rich and powerful men have evaded justice for far too long, and he is demanding that Lord Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor be dragged before the House Oversight Committee and answer questions. I'm curious to know, why is Lord Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor being dragged in when President Bill Clinton and Bill Gates have not been dragged in? And they, as all the records show, know far more than, and were far more involved than the former Prince Andrew. I'm not saying that Prince Andrew hasn't made serious mistakes and that the chickens haven't come home to roost with a merit and some justice. What I am saying is that it stuns me, as it should stun everybody else with scruples and a conscience, that the only people who have been pilloried in all of this are British citizens. Yet the American House Oversight Committee seems to forget that Bill Clinton and Bill Gates are far richer and more powerful men than Lord Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. Oh, of course, they're not from a royal family, and they're not from the premier royal family, and they're not therefore going to have the attractiveness for all the anti-monarchists that Andrew will have. But if we're speaking about rich and powerful men who have evaded justice for far too long, why don't they start with their own? And while they're at it, insofar as I'm aware, Sky Roberts is an American, and his daughter accused him of the grossest crime that a father could commit against a 9-year-old daughter. Why isn't he being dragged before the House Oversight Committee? Surely he has an awful lot of information, because off Virginia Giuffre's own account, Andrew never gave her any money, and she got $15,000 from Jeffrey Epstein for claiming to have provided services which Angeloni's book contradicts, because her claim is that they ended up in the bath at Kinnerton Street, and that is where they spent a lot of the night. Angeloni's book shows very clearly that the then Prince Andrew was driven to Buckingham Palace, where he spent the night. Now, all of this has a long way to play out, and I do not have full possession of all of the facts. So I cannot say with absolute certainty that mistakes are not being made in one arena or another. But it would appear that the royal family's information is such that they have felt it safer for the institution of the monarchy to put as much distance as they can between the monarchy and Andrew. And that is why he has been deprincified. He's not committed a crime. It's a circus. Americans are very good at political circuses. Let's remember the McCarthy era. Let's remember all the Reds under the beds trials. This seems to be whipping up to become a latter-day version of that. I would be far more comfortable having listened to somebody like, what was her name? I think Linda Cristiano, something like that, because she was a reliable witness. I'm afraid all the conflicting testimony from Virginia Giuffre does not inspire confidence in those who wish to be discerning. I'm not saying she wasn't interfered with, and I'm not saying she doesn't deserve compassion for the suffering she endured. I'm also saying she was a perpetrator by her own account and her own admission. And therefore, she also should have been right in the frame along with Ghislaine Maxwell and the rest of them. It's really interesting to see how this very sophisticated US media has managed to spin this story so that no American carries the can. The only people who carry the can are Brits. And this doesn't disturb Britons. I think it should. It certainly disturbs me. And let us wait and see what happens, because this is one that's going to run and run and run. And much of it is filled with misinformation, chief of which is emanating from the Associated Newspapers quarters, because they are up to hair in the whole mess, and they are busy exonerating themselves at every turn. I think the whole thing stinks to high heaven. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please Keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be discussing. Okay, thank you so much. Take good care. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and Godspeed. Bye-bye.